Oh, great. Yeah, I'm so happy that you can hear me. Seems to have been an issue on my side. So I just go ahead. I'll go on screen share and give you my 20 minutes presentation, if that's all right. So you should be able to see that. Is that okay? Finally. Yeah, thanks for inviting me and being able to speak about projects we did at the institute that I work at, which is the Fraunhofer Institute for Applied Information Technology in St. Augustine near Bonn in Germany. I'm Leif Oppermann. I'm the group head of the mixed and augmented reality team in there. And we had a series of projects that I want to talk about, most dominantly about the AREEF project, which was the bigger follow-up project, but there was also a seminal project that I briefly want to touch. So yeah, this work has been previously presented at the WaterHCI conference in 2016 in Florence, when we were all still traveling. Got fond memories of the project and of the conference. And so here we go. Click on a link. I would like to start with a quick video so you get an impression.
Was nehmen Sie mit ins Schwimmbad? Bikini, Badehose, ein Handtuch, na und vielleicht noch die Taucherbrille, aber ein Tablet-Computer wohl eher nicht. Das könnte sich ändern. Forscher aus St. Augustin träumen vom Multimedia-Schwimmbecken. Da soll man dann 3D-Spiele spielen können und die probiert das Fraunhofer Institut diese Woche aus im Siegburger Schwimmbad Octopus.
Soll ich jetzt den Hunger finden?
Den Hunger, ja.
Sie sind ehrenamtlich im Einsatz für die Wissenschaft. Pia, Luis und Peer unterstützen ein Forschungsprojekt, das Augmented Reality heißt. Übersetzt bedeutet das erweiterte Realität und dafür haben sie wasserdichte Tablet-Computer dabei. Mit ihnen sollen sie möglichst schnell Aufgaben in einer virtuellen Unterwasserlandschaft lösen.
Müll entfernen, solche Fische fangen und Schildkröte finden und solche Sachen.
Am Boden des Schwimmbeckens haben die Forscher Metallplatten installiert. Auf ihnen sind unterschiedliche Meereslandschaften abgebildet. Die Computer sorgen dafür, dass die Kinder sie dreidimensional sehen können und dass die Tiere sich bewegen. Die Kinder müssen dann quasi Fische fangen. Das ist nicht allzu schwer, aber unter Wasser und per Computer gewöhnungsbedürftig und etwas ganz Neues.
Es ist erkennbar, dass die Geräte wasserdicht werden und unser alltägliches Leben wird von Technik sowieso schon durchdrungen. Jeder kennt das. Das Tablet auf der Couch, das Telefon in der Hand und die Spielkonsole im Schrank. In der Unterwasserwelt wird die Technik noch nicht so sehr eingesetzt. Es gibt erste Ansätze. Wir sind eins davon und wir sind das erste im Spielebereich.
Die Tests im Siegburger Octopus laufen die ganze Woche. Rund 40 Kinder können mitmachen, doppelt so viele haben sich beworben und auch spontan hätten einige Gäste im Schwimmbad am liebsten direkt mitgemacht. Ungefähr 20 Minuten lang hat das Spiel gedauert. Peer und Luis haben gerade alle Aufgaben gelöst und die 10 Jahre alte Pia ist beim Endspurt.
Pia, bist du fertig?
Nein, noch nicht ganz.
Was musst du denn noch machen?
Eine Schildkröte finden.
Das heißt, wo könnte die sein?
Keine Ahnung.
2 Minuten später hat Pia die Schildkröte gefunden und ist fertig. Danach geben die Kinder den Forschern noch kleine Interviews. Hat alles funktioniert? Was könnte besser sein? Und vor allem, wie hat es ihnen gefallen?
Das macht viel Spaß. Ich finde es cool, weil es mal was anderes ist, außer so mit dem Tablet oder so zu spielen.
Das hat richtig Spaß gemacht.
Wenn es nach den Forschern geht, dann wird aus diesem Test hier bald eine komplette Unterwasserlandschaft. Sie würden am liebsten ein ganzes Schwimmbecken dauerhaft zur Spielwiese umfunktionieren. Die Technik jedenfalls ist soweit. Jetzt fehlt nur noch das passende Schwimmbad.
Okay, so much for the video. I hope that came across well. So, of course, there's related work. There's a few pictures here. For us, it started with architectural visualization and stage planning. You can see an early prototype here on the top left. On the middle right, we've got a screenshot from a pervasive gaming project that I was working on as a PhD student. I did my PhD at the Mixed Reality Lab in Nottingham. I think I didn't mention that. So we were in pervasive gaming and things like that. In this domain that we are talking about, the related work that was relevant from our perspective was, for For example, the 1993 wet PC, which was the first underwater PC that we found without tracking, without augmented reality, just an underwater PC. Almost 30 years ago now. Then we had the virtual oceanarium in Lisbon in Portugal 20 years ago, which was a very large simulated underwater world, that you can explore virtually. And a couple of other systems like the Sea Slate and the Triton, which was quite prominent back then, and I think is still around. But they had no mobility support and they had no AR, so they were basically monitors on swimming pool walls. And so from there, my colleague Lisa and some other colleagues started working on the underwater AR system, which was mobile and included tracking. More related work first. Tracking objects in a pool is a repeatedly found task. So you have Simon Shelley with cleaning robots and other people with sonar and optical tracking, just for example. Then for the human-computer interaction, you got Lisa, that's Bloom et al. With the underwater AR game. You've got Pell and Müller from Australia with their artistic installation. I think Floyd is giving a talk later today, I saw from the program. Then you got Von Lucas to improve ROV navigation, and you've got Rafi introducing interaction categories across 6 degrees of water contact, which I think is quite interesting. So yeah, first prototype in a mask by FIT. 13 years ago. Wow, time flies by. So the tangible aspects of the water changed the perception of the users. And we think it also, the prototype challenged the underlying assumption what AR could be or actually is. So it was a game with fish and treasures, and it was originally a student work, so very good final work of a student, and it got worldwide attention. So all the dive magazines in the world kind of featured it. It got Lisa a third prize at the SeaGraph 2009 student competition, and it was also featured on Canadian Discovery Channel. And I think if that hopefully works, it worked just before the conference. I'll give it a go here.
Well, it looks like they have quite a bit to keep them occupied for a while. Okay, from digging up the past, this next story explores a futuristic idea where ordinary swimming pools are filled with coral reefs and tropical fish, virtually speaking at least.
Now that sounds pretty weird, doesn't it? But we found someone in Bonn, Germany, who's proving with a little bit of inspiration and a lot of ingenuity, the impossible can become possible.
When Lisa Bloom went on vacation to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, she knew she had to make this when she got home to Germany.
I went snorkeling and diving at the Great Barrier Reef, and yeah, well, that was fantastic. And I thought that it's a pity that we have nothing like that in Germany. So I thought, well, we could create at least an artificial reef to extend our normal, regular and boring swimming pools.
She decided to create the first underwater augmented reality in a mask.
Everybody knows about 3D games, but nobody has discovered 3D underwater yet, so I think that's really an exciting experience. When I go under the water, I see a virtual coral reef integrated into a normal swimming pool, which is a new kind of atmosphere. Augmented reality tries to extend the real world by virtual objects, to create a new mixed kind of world. Now it's your first try for the underwater system.
Today, Lisa's kitting up her colleague Alex to test out their designs.
Yeah, it's a bit heavy. Alex has never tried it, and I'm curious how she likes it. In front of the mask, you have a little display. Okay. And underwater, you will see virtual elements that are projected onto a little mirror inside of the display, so that you can see both the real floor of the swimming pool, as well as the virtual islands and fishes underwater.
Once Alex goes in the pool, she's looking for markers like these. They cue the system to build a scene in front of you.
Because otherwise we can't display the virtual elements or the virtual islands and fishes at the right place. So for that reason, we have a little camera inside here that detects the markers on the ground. Yeah. So once you try the system and the pool, just focus your eyes on these markers and just hold it. Okay. The interaction works by approaching. So if the user comes closer to a marker, then the virtual elements react on it.
Every time Alex turns her head to follow a fish, she's throwing another curveball at the system. So they had to use this 3D orientation device.
This device sends the data to the computer, and as you can see here, the virtual cube is rotating exactly as the real one. And that's a technology we use to see how the user is holding his head. So if the user looks into a different direction, we can easily recognize it with this device.
It was really amazing. I've never experienced something like that.
This is an early prototype, but Lisa has many applications in mind, from games to training programs for divers.
For example, my personal dream would be to have the Finding Nemo scenario, swim with Nemo and his friends. I think there are a lot of things that can be done by such a system, so yeah, I also have a lot of ideas in mind.
The next goal is to broaden the user's field of view.
Well, one of the main drawbacks at the moment is the display, which has only a small field of view. And so what you want would be to have a bigger display where you can see a lot of more of the scenery.
So Lisa will keep her toes pruned in the pool as she slowly builds a little piece of Australia in Germany.
That's of course my vision. It's not yet as good as WaterHCI, of course, and well, maybe it will never be, but still I think it's a nice experience.
You know, I love augmented reality technology, right? It's very, very cool stuff. But I think that one thing...
And where you can put virtual things on top of real things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'd have a layer or an interface. And we've seen a lot of that. You know, there's ways to get to the subway stop, VR games and stuff like that, AR games. But I think that we have to be a little bit careful when we're looking at, the real corals are disappearing, the real birds are disappearing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but, and this shouldn't reduce efforts to save those things. On the other hand, if coral reefs do go into decline, this may be the only way that people get to experience it. I mean, in a way, it's the same argument as for zoos, right?
Right.
Why do you keep zoos? Well, because this may be the only way that people see live animals. Now, of course, this isn't live, but at least it gives them some sort of version of what it would be like.
And to be able to appreciate these creatures out in the wild.
But it has to be more real. So if it's in the Amazon and you've got piranhas,
right,
you really need to be able to rip the apart.
Right. So that was the prior work, and then we got the AREEF project, which tried to put it into pool and into children's hands. So the first prototype was a bit clunky and fragile and also very expensive. So we tried to make it all a bit more low cost, and also while making safe, which relates to what Bob was talking about earlier. So yeah. Augmented reality for water-based entertainment, education and fun. That was the full title for our funny acronym. And we wanted to develop underwater AR experiences that you could deploy in water parks or swimming pools. It's a project from 2010, just December really, so 21 years ago, and running for 3 years. Led by us back then with participants, SME corporations in Germany and in Korea, and also subcontract in Korea, so 2 partners on each side. We were funded by the Korea Institute for Advancement of Technology, or short the KIAD, and we were the first KIAD funded project with a European lead organization, which gave us some kind of press also back in the day. Our mission statement from when we started, we thought that water is really a fascinating medium, and we wanted to develop fascinating underwater AR experiences. And when we looked back at prior work in the field of augmented reality, which I've also been doing for 20 years now, or back then for 10 years, basically everything had been staged in the medium air. And so that was all new territory, terra incognita, if you wish. So we wanted to bring computer games and entertainment applications from the desktop or your mobile device to mobile underwater using AR technology, and we wanted to pioneer that. Just a brief overview of our system. So as you've seen in the video, it's basically a tablet that was at first a Galaxy Tab and then a Nexus 10 built into a waterproof case. We'll have pictures of that in a bit. And Other than that, that was, of course, the standard Android operating system with the Unity 3D engine on that, and with tracking, and also, of course, content. So just a quick look at the engineering bits. So in year one, that's the top picture on the right, we had a metal case with 26 bolts, which was very robust. We had touch improvements because, well, it was watertight, so you couldn't reach the touch screen, but the project partner, Umtech, filed for a patent after they found a solution to make the touch possible on this. And it was a single-player game. It worked, and we had to rework it in year two, so we could go further. First improvement was to make the case a lot more lightweight. And that was reached with the introduction of a lot more plastic, which also finally gave a better Wi-Fi reception. And it was less than half the weight than in year one. It probably still cracked the floor tile if you dropped it to the floor, but anyway, that was waterproof. Then in year three, we refined the locking mechanism to make it easier to use, like a suitcase really. And yeah, we changed dimensions for the final hardware. In the first 2 years, it was the Galaxy Tab, and then for the final year, it was the Nexus. And we produced multiple of these units for our user testing, and we also made a prototype for wireless charging because that was deemed important by the water park experts that we talked to. Just a quick overview of what the experience would look like. You've seen it in the video already, but there's basically several kids in a pool at different underwater locations marked by metal plates. They would have little islands where they could interact while hovering or swimming above that island. And you would basically go on little mini quests that you would receive from the out of the water base station, and you would also have to take your results back to there. Yeah. As I already said, you move around, you explore the virtual underwater scenery, and you score at the base station. The background for this kind of designs was manifold, and not the least to Wi-Fi not spreading really well underwater. So we had to find a seamful way of playing with the Wi-Fi signal reception, really. Yeah, just a quick overview of the assets. So you've got the envisioned setup at the top, and in the middle you see the actual setup. Actually quite a nice shot. I was really pleased when we had that it worked out like that. The base station is just a low-cost waterproofed Nexus 10 tablet and a big marker. And then we've got 3 alu debond markers also that we sunk in the water. They were usually like a meter wide. And on the top right, on the bottom right, you see an example island. Yeah, for example, there's a little lobster over here. Yeah, more screenshots. I'll just skip those. More screenshots. So yeah, we wanted to evaluate that. So we wanted to find out if it was actually fun, and also if it would allow players to safely finish the game with a sense of satisfaction. It's more researchy way of saying it was okay and fun. And we wanted to find potential problems and challenges that we would have to address in future versions, or maybe others could address in future versions. And so what we did was a user-centered evaluation. We tested the game in a realistic environment, i.e. in a pool with kids, and we collected feedback for the game under as real conditions as we could, and children were of 7 to 12 years old. We used a mixed method approach using qualitative and quantitative evidence, which required quite some manpower, up to 5 researchers at the time. We also logged some events on the device itself, and I think there's a slide on it in a bit. We basically had a 1-hour time slot for 3 children, so we would welcome them, introduce them to everything. The parents would be around, of course. We would play the game, interview them, and they would get a little present at the end. Chronology was we first did a pilot evaluation in Darmstadt, Germany with 3 children. Then we would campaign to organize more players, because we found that it's easier to do a campaign that people want to participate in than to ask people if they can send their kids over, which is usually not very well received. And we got a lot of feedback from that campaign, and many people wanted to participate with the children. And we got 36 players during that week-long campaign. Yeah, pictures from the test players at the pilot in Darmstadt. And so we tested the overall procedure of everything, including our evaluation methodology. And we wanted to establish a routine in the team. And we only had very minor refinements to do after the pilot test, which was one of the tasks was too complicated. There's a little game where you could clean the underwater world from some trash, and that was made a little bit easier. And we also just put the marker distance right. Then we went to Siegburg swimming pool, and yeah, I already talked about the details of the demographics. The pool area was about 8 by 8 meters and about 1 meter in depth. And so, yeah, find out if they played it well, if it was fun, and if it was fit for the market. So that was what we tried to find out. Yeah, that's what I mentioned as this slide about the mixed method approach. So we got the device logging, we've got video cameras over water and underwater. You can see my colleague Andy on the lower left. We got observers taking notes by hand, and we got questionnaires, little mini interviews that we did with the kids. Not very long, but just to get some evidence. So results, yeah. It was perceived as very novel, not a big surprise, but children had not seen anything like this before. We thought maybe in the games they would find something similar, but they haven't. Tracking worked. We did some basic tracking tests with custom-made tracking. Our group did custom tracking code in the past, and we also know how to use OpenCV, so we try to find ways of improving stuff underwater, but even in the project, like in 2011 or 2012, we already opted to go with the standard library, which was Euphoria back in the day, and we had no real issues with that. So we could just say that even 10 years ago, it was okay to just take a standard tracking library underwater, and you would have no real issues. We found that you would want to keep the challenges simple, so children could have some fun and wouldn't be too confused, and also wouldn't be frustrated. So, for example, the cleaning trash was still a bit too complicated for some children, which caused frustration, and you don't want that if you just pay for something, probably. So, and you want to be very obvious. If something is not clear, it will cause confusion again. Also on the interface level, so we used touch input only for text entry, and then if you wanted to point at something, you would aim it. So it was a little crosshair in the middle of the display. Still, children try to touch on things because, of course, that's what they know. That's what you do with these tablets and smartphones. So yeah, make very obvious how you want to have the interaction. Marker distance for us worked fine with about 62 centimeter diameter on the short side for the marker size. Yeah, and it's related to the water depth. So if our water was 1 meter deep, you would have this kind of diameter. If it was deeper, it would be bigger, obviously. Smaller kids, of course, play in shallower water. You have to provide for that. If your markers are too big, maybe it's not so fun because they don't have the overview. Maybe it doesn't even work. So maybe make some smaller markers. We found that water current is an issue in the pool. It's actually not surprising, but sometimes you rediscover things that you could have known before. So, of course, there's fountains and vents, and they provide a flow of water. Not a big issue for a grown-up like us, but small children might, just flow away, and we've seen that. So they were a bit frustrated by that. And you might not be able to turn it off because it's not just you in the pool, and it might just be necessary for some other area very nearby. So you have to keep that in mind. Yeah, we locked data and a JSON file. So the start and the end of the mission and every task that you completed or mastered and on which island you were looking at. And then we turned that into graphics that are now coming up just very quickly. So here you see an example session of 3 kids, Paul 1, Paul 2, and Keenan. And you could see on which markers they were. The light, the middle, and the dark blue are different markers that they had aimed. And then you could see how long they played for. So Paul 2 was the fastest. But that's not necessarily the goal of the game. I mean, if you have a good game, maybe you want to play it longer, just, and then for the different events, you could see it when they found different fishes and so forth. And having this graphic allowed us to really unpack what happened in the game for each of the kids as part of the evaluation. If you are interested in the details, you can always read up in our mobile HCI paper, Playing on AREEF, just like the name of this talk. So yeah, speed is an issue. We can see that in this graphics, Paul 1 was a lot faster than Paul 2. Yeah, he lost some tracking and caught air once. And okay. As clarity, you can see from the graphics that Paul 1 was a bit confused by the second mission, which was the cleaning mission where you had to push trash over the edge of the island, and he tried again and again and again. And so that's the long blue bit bar at the bottom of the top. And of course, breathing is an issue. If somebody has continuous tracking of 2 minutes, it's probably not because he held his breaths for so long. It's more like he had his head above the water. So that's an interaction you will see. It's not like people will always dive or flow in the water. Maybe they just stand and have the head above the water, stuff like that. Yeah. Test user Fabian really enjoyed the graphics. So he stated in the interview that he just explored the world and he stayed longer because he liked it, and that was good. Maybe you get frustrated with some things, but maybe you're also very persistent. So we have Marcus here, who only caught his first fish after 73 attempts. So that's dedication. He thought it could be improved though, but for him it was part of the game, and then he tried it so many times. That was amazing. Yeah, general feedback, as kind of was to be expected after everything worked out. I'm always very nervous when evaluation starts, but you soon get a feel if it works out or not. And we got overwhelmingly positive feedback. Children really like to catch fish. That was their favorite bit. Cleaning trash wasn't so well received, and the treasure box also wasn't so well received. It wasn't so much fun, but catching fish was really good. They like the AREEF system. You can see that on the diagrams, and some of them would rent it. Well, 35 out of 36 would say they would rent it and ask their parents maybe to get some money. The difficulty was about right. Some things were too complicated, some were too easy, but generally was okay. So some discussion about the waterproof case. Ours was still slightly too heavy after the third iteration, and maybe make it floating on the water surface was some thoughts we had. But generally it worked. Handling was okay, not all super fantastic, but okay. Kids liked it. That was good. The swimming pool director liked it, and also the TV report was quite positive. We learned that swimming pool installation needs to consider water taps and water fountains, as already mentioned, for future wishes, just from our evaluation. And again, more details on the paper. More virtual scenery, longer playtime, maybe even. I mean, we had 20 minutes, but they would have liked to play maybe half an hour or up to 90 minutes, someone said. You could have other themes and again, smaller, lighter case, recurring issue, I think especially from the smaller kids. Here's an anecdote from a father who spoke to me, watching his son playing well underwater, and he was usually afraid of being underwater, he said. But not so with the gain. So the father was really happy that the son happily dove underwater and just didn't think about his anxiety while doing this. And so the father was clearly very pleased about that. And maybe the game had to mitigate the anxiety. I think it did. So maybe that could be an aspect that can be designed for in VR, AR, XR, whatever. Yeah, upshot. You can do underwater AR apps for sure. I mean, you can do underwater VR. We all seen that already. I mean, we had the feedback from discussions we did with expert interviews back in the day, and also when we tried to sell this. People want to put it on slides and put on masks and so forth, and throughput is an issue and stuff like that. But if you want to go underwater AR and not put it in the mask like we did in the first prototype, but make it safer for kids to use, standard tracking is good enough. The scenic content was very much appreciated, and this is also where most of the work is. I mean, one of our 4 partners, us included, one of the partners was a content expert. They were just doing 3D animations and games all day long. So that's what we're really good at. And I think that's where you see that the current companies that are selling VR experiences in this domain have their emphasis. They are really good at making content. The engineering is not so difficult anymore. So yeah, waterproofness, that's of course an issue. But just having a waterproof device alone isn't enough. Even if it's the latest iPhone, back then it was the 7. We are farther now. We also tested it with the Sony Xperia Tablet Z, which was a brand new waterproof tablet back in the day. And we took it to pool. We spoke with Sony, and it worked. I mean, but you wouldn't have the touch because the water would be touching the capacitive screen all the time. So you would have random presses everywhere. So maybe the case wasn't such a bad idea. Or maybe not using touch. Yeah. And if you put it in the case, you should allow for wireless charging, because otherwise it's so much of a nuisance. I mean, we lost our backup case in the first time slot of the first day, and because I didn't correctly close the case, I guess, and then one of the poor children had a tablet go bust a few minutes into the game, and well, was my problem, but we had a backup device. But the rest of the week we didn't have one, and we were extra careful to close the case properly with a lot of Vaseline and stuff. Yeah. So children and pool operators like this kind of stuff. Missions should be simple and clear, and physical movement in a pool is not a problem. So maybe this could be a model for spicing up old pools, just like the VR coaster now is a model for spicing up old roller coasters. So that's what we thought, yeah. Finally, after the project ended, we were also invited to Game City Festival in Nottingham, which was a big UK entertainment festival. It was a lot of fun to be there, really great. And yeah, it was also on television. We were invited. I almost met the Korean president back in the day, because they set up a science fair and we were all invited. But German politicians took too much time, so she couldn't visit the science fair. But anyway, almost. So that's me and the AREEF project and the underwater project. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.